Are you good enough? It's a question that many of us have asked ourselves time and time again. So in this video, I'm going to break down why this is not the right question to ask. Let's go. Hi, my name is Pete and welcome to Studio Live today, where my goal is to help you create, record and release your best music. So if that sounds like your kind of bag, consider subscribing. Today, we're talking about whether you, I, all of us are good enough. And the reason I wanted to talk about this today is I'm asked this question far too often by very many talented and passionate and creative folks. They say to me, Pete, I don't feel like I'm good enough to be doing what I'm doing. And it's such the wrong question to ask, and it is so subjective, and that's what I wanted to dive into today, to give you some reassurance that yes, you are good enough to be doing what you're doing right now. Let's dive in. Now, the number one thing I want to put out there is that if you are asking this question, if you are feeling this way, that is totally okay. It is completely natural. Almost everyone that I've ever come across has asked that at some point in their life. So don't beat yourself up thinking, oh no, why am I even asking this? Why do I have this lack of confidence? Well, everyone at some stage in their life, almost everyone, unless you're a sociopath, and we will talk about that another day, but almost everyone has this feeling. So it's 100% natural. But the reason that you need to readjust your thinking to this is that good is the most subjective thing. Good, bad, great, better, all of these are 100% subjective, and that means that you can't actually put that label. What you consider good, someone else may consider bad. I'll ask you this question. Is Katy Perry better than Metallica? Well, is that even a question that you can ask? Because if you're a big Katy Perry fan, you may not be into the heavy metal music. And likewise, if you love rocking out to Metallica, you probably think that Katy Perry is not the sort of music anyone should be listening to. So that's the second thing, I guess, that I wanted you to keep in mind here, is that good, better, best, these are all subjective terms. So being good enough doesn't actually make sense as a question to ask. The next point I want to make is, what are your goals? So what are you good enough for? What are you actually trying to achieve with your music or your art or whatever you're actually doing? Because that's something that a lot of folks miss. When they're providing feedback or when they're taking feedback on board from other people, others may not actually know what you're trying to achieve. So they may say something like, you can't create a song in GarageBand, you can't mix and master and release your own song. That's not going to sound as good as someone that's in $1 million studio, and you're never going to make it onto the charts and make $1 million and sell 1 million singles. That's all great, but if you don't have any intention of doing any of that, it's completely irrelevant. So whether you are good enough to be a performing artist and making lots of bank, selling your music and streaming and touring the world, that's very different to, hey, I want to express myself artistically. I think I've got some talent here that I want to share with the world, and I want to actually share my music and creativity with other people. So make sure that you actually know going in, what are your goals? Because as soon as you say, am I good enough? You're actually putting yourself, you're comparing yourself with someone else or with something else. Now, if you're not clear on that goal, then you're going to get into trouble, because you're going to start feeling down, because there's going to be this big gap between where you perceive you are and where you think other people are. So keep that in mind. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And related to that is this question: are you good enough yet? Because none of us are good enough when we first start out. I say this a lot, but everyone starts at zero. Everyone has to write their first song, record their first song, mix, master, and release their first song. And your first song is very rarely going to be your best song. There's an old saying that goes, it took me 10 years, 20 years to become an overnight success. So when you look at people that have made it, that might be where you want to be, that are good enough, it's not because they just had this natural God-given talent and just went out there and did their thing. There's 99% of the time, a lot of hard work, determination, practice, and repetitiveness that goes into actually being at that level. So when you're asking yourself, if you insist upon asking yourself the question, am I good enough? If you add a yet to the end of that, you may not be good enough to be where you want to be yet. But you know what you need to do? You don't need to sit around and lull on that and worry about it. You need to practice. You need to write songs. You need to create music. You need to do the things, do the work that's going to take you from being at that level to the level of what you want to achieve, to actually be able to achieve your music goals. Now, this is where feedback plays such a vital and crucial role in your development. In whatever you're doing, you need to be able to learn to take on feedback, whether it be positive or constructive. Because if you don't know what your flaws are, what your faults are, what your areas for development are, how do you expect to actually get to that next level? There's no way that you can do it all independently. And if you get stuck in your own head, as a lot of us artists tend to do, you're not actually going to get to the next level. You need the feedback of other people. Now, the warning there is to be careful because, as I mentioned previously, other people may not know what you're actually trying to achieve. They may give you feedback based on what they are doing, and that's really, really common. People don't understand the difference between what they think someone should do and what that person should actually do. So when you're seeking feedback, when you're sharing your music and you're asking for feedback, be really clear about what you're trying to do. And if you do get that feedback from someone saying, you will never be on the radio with this mix, then just politely respond and say, that's cool. Thanks for the feedback. I'm actually just trying to improve my work at the moment. What's the one thing that you would change if this was your song? And that will just change that conversation from what they want to tell you to what you actually want to find out. And you might get some confronting information, but it is actually going to help you. If you do genuinely want to improve, even if someone's being a bit of a yes, then finding out the information from them about what they think you should do differently can actually help you. Let me leave you with this one final point that might give you a little bit of a confidence boost, and that is this. The very fact that you're asking this question shows a level of humility that a lot of folks don't actually have. There's something that I like to call the American Idol syndrome, which is where people actually have a belief in their own ability that is actually much higher than reality. And I think that can be a lot more dangerous. The very fact that you're asking, am I good enough? Which again, not a great question to ask in terms of that phrasing, but you're actually questioning what you're achieving. That is a good thing because it means that you are humble enough to understand that, hey, you may have faults, you may have flaws, you may have areas for development, you may need to seek more feedback, you may need to work hard to improve. Those are all good and positive things. And if you flip it all around on its head and say, what do I need to do to achieve my goals? That's a better way of framing it. Thanks for watching this one. I hope you got a little bit of something out of it. There's 2 more videos linked down below if you want to check some more out here on the channel. You can also subscribe to the channel by clicking or tapping on the Studio Live Today icon. I'll see you on the next video.